Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5 Minute Catholic Apologetics, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today I'm going to posit the question, how many churches did Jesus Christ create? Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sanctus, ut eram principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Amen. So I'll put in some banner notes for previous episodes that are somewhat similarly themed. Like I have an episode on explaining why other denominations are not the true church, but I just posit this simple question, like how many churches did Jesus Christ create? And was it his intention to have multiple denominations? Now, if you're part of one of those multiple denominations, no doubt you'll find a way to spin the justification of your denomination. Like you see in the Reform movement, like in the Calvinist movement, they'll lots of times say that they are the true church, they are the elect, and everyone else is not, and certainly Catholics are not. But it's like asking Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader why the empire is justified. You know, you're not going to ask them, or it's like Stalin asking Mao for advice. It's like, what are you doing? Not to say that Protestants are like megalomaniac murderers, dictators, and so forth. But of course they're not objective. So if you look historically and you look scripturally, Christ created one church. You can see this in Matthew 16:18, where he tells Peter, you are the rock, upon this rock I will build my church. He doesn't use the plural in Greek. And in fact, ecclesia, the Greek word for church, it's the only time it's used in the Gospels is when he says it there. And we've talked about this. Christ intended to create a visible church with hierarchy. We have an episode on this. He intended to create a visible church. It wasn't supposed to be this invisible group of believers. It's a visible church with hierarchy, with the ability to administer sacraments. And like we had the Eucharist before we had the New Testament. We had confession before we had New Testament. We had a lot of the sacraments, if not all of them, before we had the New Testament. You can see last unction and talked about in James, when it was written in James. So the church was also given the ability to excommunicate. You see this played out. Jesus gives those rules in Matthew 18. You see Paul talking about it in the Corinthians books, where he uses his power as an apostle, as a leader of the church, to excommunicate the man that was sleeping with his mother-in-law, and then later on that person's brought back. We talk about how excommunication is essentially a loving thing, but another way, either here nor there. He created one church. That was his intention. So then you look at, well, what churches can that be? Well, okay, let's say you think it's Anglicanism. Well, but it can't be Anglicanism because Anglicanism didn't exist until the 1530s, where Henry VIII broke away. Well, maybe it's Mormonism. Well, Mormonism didn't exist because Joseph Smith founded it in the 1820s, 1830s. Well, it's Presbyterianism, but it can't because John Knox created that in the 1500s. Well, then it's going to be Lutheranism. Well, no, because Martin Luther didn't rebel until the 1520s, 15 teens. And you can go down the list. None of these denominations, and remember the word denomination means from the name. What name is that? The Catholic Church. And the word denomination was first used in the 1520s by Protestants. So it narrows it down. The only church that he created was a church that he established on the rock, which is Peter. And that's the Catholic Church. No other church can say that historically. No other church can say that. He gave Peter the keys to the kingdom, which is a reference to the Old Testament, essentially prime ministers that were given the keys by the king, by the Davidic kings, to administer stuff. So he's directly referencing that. He didn't give that to Bartholomew, Thaddeus, Thomas. No, he gave it to Peter. Then you see Peter's primacy played out scripturally. We have an episode on that in Acts of the Apostles, for example. But on some level, that doesn't matter. The church has always held this. That's why we have episodes here on early saints, apostolic fathers, and the church fathers, because they demonstrate this. Whether you're reading St. Ignatius or St. Irenaeus, they all talk about that. Peter had primacy. Peter was given certain powers that the other apostles, like in Matthew 18, who were given the power to bind and unbind as well, don't have. So the Catholic Church was the one church created by Jesus Christ. And we have that apostolic succession, we have that historical succession, because from Peter you can go to Linus, you can go to Anacletus, you can go to Cletus, and you can go down the line, unbroken line of the bishops of Rome. No one can deny that to the present day Pope Francis. Now the Sedis will say that it ended in 1950 or 1958, but nobody can deny the Catholic Church is the one church. Now what about the Orthodox? Okay, well, the Orthodox definitely have apostolic succession, but they can't say that the true church founded by Jesus Christ because they turned their back on the primacy of Rome. They turned their back on Peter. And remember Christ said, he who hears you hears me. They turned their back on Peter, mostly for political reasons. We talked about in the episode, the standalone treatment we did on Orthodoxy. But they can have apostolic succession. They do have some of the truth, but they're schismatics. They broke away from the unity of Holy Mother Church, which is founded on Peter, who was Bishop of Antioch, then Bishop of Rome. And that's where he died, and that's why the papacy stayed in Rome. Also, it made sense because it was the center of the world, essentially, at that point, which is the Roman Empire. So I would ask you, as a Protestant, if the Catholic Church isn't the true church founded by Jesus Christ, because Christ used the singular word ecclesia in Matthew 18, then who is the true church? Now, you'll say your church is, right? But it's not. It's not your church. It's the Catholic Church. Now, some people will say, well, the Catholic Church might have been the true church. It was founded on Peter, but sometime around Constantine, they added stuff. They added pagan traditions. We have episodes on all these. Constantine started the church. We have a refutation of that. We have a refutation on paganism infiltrating the church in the early times. None of this is true. Like the Mormons believe, a lot of the kind of the more fringy people believe there was a great apostasy. And we always tell them, it's like, well, prove it. Go to the episode. What are the two easiest ways to practice apologetics? Two phrases. Show me and prove it. And none of them can prove it. They can't prove it. When you get to Lutheranism and Calvinism in the 16th century and the Anabaptists, then it's all like we're returning to the primitive church. Prove it. The primitive church had the Holy Mass. The primitive church believed in the real presence. All you have to do is just read the church fathers and you see all these things. The original church was praying for the dead, something that we do. The real church, the early church, I should say, believed in statues and paintings of people. You can see that in the catacombs. So look, I get it, because your whole life you've been essentially, I wouldn't say taught a lie, but you don't have the fullness of the faith. You don't have the fullness of the faith. And all the good that you have from your tradition, you remember what it says in, was it 2 Thessalonians, you got to maintain the traditions that we've given you. Paul says that, the apostolic traditions. All the good that you have came from the Catholic Church when you broke away. So I know a lot of this is hard to understand, but again, give me a cogent argument that your church was the true church, the one church founded by Jesus Christ, because Jesus only intended to create one church. It would make no sense. Why would he want to create a church that would have whatever 30,000 denominations, 15,000, depending on what stat? That makes no sense. A house divided cannot stand, as he himself admits. It would make no sense. He created one church, and it's the Catholic Church. Guys, post in the comments. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Hit the notification button, subscribe button, share with others. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.